Hey everybody, welcome to Playbook by Laserforce Loveland. This is a podcast for Laserforce players who play laser tag from anywhere around the world, all different game modes, Space Marines 5, Laser Ball, Highlander, all that good stuff. This podcast is basically designed to be a platform for geeky laser tag conversations between geeks who play laser tag. And today we have a guest on, Thanatos. Is that how you pronounce it?
That is how you pronounce it, yes.
I learned about that when I took a Philosophy 101 class one day, and I'm like, oh, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And it quite fits your personality too.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's a reason I ended up with the name I ended up with.
So my codename's Mischief. I am a laser tag player out of Loveland, Colorado. And Than, what's your origin story?
So my origin story is I started playing Laserforce back in the olden days in February of 1997 at
Wow.
I am 100% aware that some of the people listening to this podcast were not alive when I started playing. That's just kind of an occupational hazard at this point. So I started playing in February of 1997 at the then very brand new open Laserforce in Sacramento,
Rest in
California.
peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. That site was open until 2017, 2018, and
Yep.
is no longer. It's very, very sad. But so I started playing in February of 97. I became a member in late March of 97. I was actually an employee in Sacramento for a time. And while I was involved with the Sacramento site, I essentially became the person who was responsible for, leagues, tournaments, members nights, helping to set up the original nationals tournaments in the States. Was the first U.S. player to travel to Australia to play, which I did in '99.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, kind of like firsts that I managed, which kind of it's kind of, thinking back across things for an intro. It's like, oh yeah, I've actually done a fair bit with this game over
Yeah.
the over the 26 years I've been playing. Jesus Christ. It's a very long time to be doing a thing, but it's something that has given me a lot of opportunity throughout my life. As strange as that is, as that is to say, the overall trajectory of my life would have been much different without Laser Force.
Dude,
Just in
yeah,
general.
we could make a whole podcast about that because same for me. I've been playing for 12 years and I could talk for a while about how this game has helped me change as a person, and all the friends that I've made around the world. Like I said, that could be a whole podcast in itself, and maybe it should, because
Well,
we're here to stay. Laser Force is freaking amazing.
funnily enough, so I'm also part of a Laser Force podcast called The Resupply, which you can find on Twitch and on YouTube. We actually did the that episode a couple of years ago now, where myself and the other two hosts, guy next door from Auckland, New Zealand, and Death Knight, who was also from Sacramento originally, we started kind of doing a butterfly effect of, things that would not have happened in our lives had we not gotten involved with Laser Force. And it was pretty spectacular. Like, oh wow, like, yeah, it's like, this was a canon event for all three of us, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's very interesting to kind of trace that out. So yeah, definitely worth doing with more people on on a different show for sure, because
Do you
it's pretty ridiculous.
do you know if I were to ask you to link me that episode, would you be able to?
I would be able to eventually. I'd have to find it.
Okay. Then
But yes.
I'm gonna make a commitment on Than's behalf that if you look in the description, we're gonna put a link to that episode of the resupply down there. And I feel like a jerk because y'all are so good at doing shout outs for our channel, Laserforce Loveland. By the way, your link to us isn't working because we renamed ourselves to Laserforce Loveland to be inclusive of all the different game formats. So sorry that wasn't working for you guys. But yeah, Than's on a podcast called The Resupply, and they were definitely here first, setting the way for really just bringing the community together and helping keep track of the tournament scene and the goings on around the global Laser Force scene. So go check them out on Twitch and YouTube. We can put links.
Well,
but the reason,
and
go ahead.
to be clear, also, like, we're like we, it's actually been very gratifying for us to see like so many other people. I mean, obviously yourself included, Lucy from the Czech
Yeah, Lucy.
Republic, a few others. It's been really gratifying seeing people go, oh hey, these three idiots can do a podcast about Laser Force. I should do a podcast about Laser Force, and just seeing like more people kind of start creating that content also has just been absolutely spectacular. So
Definitely.
yeah. So don't think that any of the three of us are like, oh my god, all these people horning in on our territory. No. We are beyond thrilled that people have seen what we're doing and gone, hey, yes, I want to do something like that, but I want to put my own spin on it, and that's just amazing. So yeah, it's definitely been fun to watch over the last little bit as more and more people have been creating their own Laser Force content.
Well, that's awesome. And it's a real pleasure to have you on to join me today, which I want to get to the topic. Of all the topics, I was asking Than what he wanted to talk about, and he brought up the evolution of stats. And if I can give a quick just summary of stats for anyone who doesn't know, we've connected through a game mode called Space Marines 5. It's 5 roles, highly competitive. People do tournaments around the world for it. And there is a player named Maniac, or his name is Russ, and he created this website where basically you can take scorecards from computers that are running games of Laser Force, and you can upload those to this website, and it projects out all your stats from your Space Marines 5 games, like your hit differential and your score, and even more minute things like I don't know, like average missiles per game and number of your own nukes canceled. And you can build up a whole database. Like our Loveland social games probably has like a good 500 or so games in there. And so we've got rankings of our players that date back all the way to like 2016, 2017. It's crazy. And Than, I want to just let you take it away here, because you kind of want to pay homage to what the scene was like beforehand and how it's really changed the game, from what I understand.
Well, so first off, we're gonna huge shout out to Maniac, who is also another Sacramento player.
Legend.
And the website itself is lfstats.com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's what it is now is absolutely amazing. I mean, the fact that now on a social SM5 night, you can complete a game, upload the scorecard basically almost immediately, and be able to like quickly after a game look and see, oh, this was how much downtime I actually had. Oh, these were my hit differentials against people. Oh, here's how. Let me look back and kind of see how it compared to previous game. I mean, yes, these are things you can do if you've got, especially with the newer Laserforce kiosk software, and you can see the last 10 scorecards on kiosk screen. So yeah, there's that option if you're there at the site, but being able to review the stuff later is, from home is also extremely nice. Now, this is the current end product. Russ is constantly making small tweaks to it, based on feedback from, usually from Rusty and Traj from Brisbane, because they
they
know
a thing.
They know a thing or two. I mean, they've both been playing for an extraordinarily long amount of time. I mean, Traj, I think, has been playing since 1987, and Rusty has been playing since I believe 1996. So they've both been around the block a few times.
Yeah.
But getting to the point that we're at now with the stats has definitely been a very iterative and not always pain-free process.
I'm sure.
So if we go back many years ago, let us cast our minds
go back to the beginning. Once upon a time.
Yeah, once upon a time in Laserforce. So my understanding, there's essentially eras of stats. My understanding is that there was actually way back in the day is when Laserforce ran on DOS, because Laserforce did run on DOS for a very long time. And the scorecards in those days, you could get them to output as text files.
I'm writing these down. I'm going to create my own timeline and tell the kids about it. The DOS era. Yeah.
And my understanding is that there was actually a little stats program that Brisbane had, I believe it was Brisbane, that was able to take that text input and do some stats with it. I vaguely remember seeing this application like once or twice, but it never really got like widespread use as far as that goes. Like it was a homegrown tool that was used kind of for leagues, and that was about it. And I'm sure if Traj ends up listening to this pod, which I'm sure he will have some sort of correction there for me. But that's ages and ages ago. So that's kind of like, say, the prehistoric age of stats. First kind of the first kind of real widespread stat program adoption was a little program called LF Analysis that was written by a player from the Oakley, Australia site named Extremes. And this was like...
Is that with an S or a Z?
Z, Extremes. Yeah.
I had a feeling.
With an X at the start. Like it was, very
Extremes.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very edgy, very edgelord, as far as that goes. And this was, I believe this was like 98, 99, somewhere in kind of that range. Again, all this stuff kind of blends together after a while. I'm old, things mesh, things merge. It just happens that way.
Sure.
And this was just it was a very simple, just a very simple GUI where you could input the scores from the scorecards, and so you could have your person's name, their position, their score, their accuracy, and then it had two columns that you could do as custom columns. So one of them typically was, medic hits, and then for a long time at Nats Comps, there was a thing that was best and fairest, which is essentially kind of sportsmanship now. And so after the game, the rest would vote for the three,
Are you doing like
three
League of
players
Legends
they
where
thought
you
were.
honor a player on your team or on the enemy team?
This was the refs doing it, but
The
basically,
refs. It's funny.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, so that little application, in its version 1 and version 2 forms, because it got a version 2 form that made it much easier to do tournaments with it. Um, like on the version 1 app, in order to do a standalone tournament, you basically had to put a fresh database in. And I mean, easy enough. It was just an access database. You make sure you have a clean copy. You copy that in, whatever. But it's still a pain in the ass.
Sure.
The version 2 lets you create a tournament within the application, and the database would hold it separately correctly and all that. So cool, evolutionary things.
Yeah.
So this app we used through at least 2006, possibly a little bit longer, but I mean, it was basically, a good basic tool. um Now you had to, obviously, you had to make sure you got the scorecards. You actually had to print them out to do anything with them. It didn't support, saving the scorecards to a text file and pulling them in that way. No, you actually had to print scorecards out. So, if you had a day where, the printer wasn't working, or there was no paper for the scorecard printer, sorry, you don't get stats that night. That's just how that goes. Sucks to be you. And then we move into, the 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 era of, maybe trying to do a little more.
Okay. Right around 07.
07, 08, 09, in that range. And this is about the point that, we're still using this more simple application, but there start being some conversations around what would eventually become MVP. And
Okay.
but I mean it's very early doors at that point, like very early discussions. Where this all kind of comes to a head is it is at the 2011 Nats in Syracuse.
Okay.
So at this point, we've had discussions. Okay, cool. We're gonna do a thing, and we're gonna try and do relatively real time stats. This was a terrible fucking mistake.
Okay.
And I say it was a terrible mistake.
Okay.
Well, so we didn't have any way to automatically generate any of the numbers. And with the things that we wanted to track, essentially what we had to do was get the scorecards and then enter all of that data, all of the scorecard data, all of it, into an Excel spreadsheet.
Oh gosh. What sorry sap got stuck with that job?
You're talking to him.
Oh my gosh.
So and I said, now I was fortunate in that Traj helped, DK helped, Beans helped, like, but there were definitely it was definitely not ideal to have for all of my time outside of games and all of some other people's time outside of games to be spent doing data entry.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was bad.
I mean, that would take how long after every single game? That's a lot of numbers.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Probably your
Yeah.
entire rest period if you're doing play ref sit.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's so when we got done with that tournament, we got back to Sacramento, and it was like there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way to do this. Because everybody responded really well to the overall idea of MVP and being able to track things at a deeper level, because we had gone from with the previous app, we were literally just tracking average scores, accuracy, medic hits. I mean, really, those were and to be fair, those are kind of the three big things that you want to track for sure. But the possibility of being able to track missiles easier, track hit differential easier, track all these other things to kind of build a a better ranking system, as it were, because that's really all MVP is a ranking system.
So a way to try to simplify the value of a player into a number.
Right. And as always, I mean, MVP is not the be all
It's not perfect.
end all, and I feel like that.
I got thoughts on that. I think we'll touch on that later for sure.
Yeah, like, no, that's very much a caveat that I always have to put out, and I constantly will put out with MVP, is that it is not the be all and end all, because for as many things as we measure, there are certain things that just do not show up that just don't show up in the numbers. That there's always intangibles that don't show up. So it's a great guide. It's a good guidepost, and it will show you things that you need to work on, but it's not the be all and end all. Anyway, that aside, because as you said, I'm sure we'll have a longer conversation about that towards the end of the pod. So we get back to Sacramento, and discussions start happening. Now, fortunately, at the time in Sacramento, we had some very, very brilliant, for lack of a better word, software developers. Like basically multiple senior devs at different companies that were members and would come play.
Cool.
And yeah, very, very cool. And this is also at a point where the output of the scorecards is in PDF format.
Right, because it wasn't at one point, right? You had to just go off the scorecard.
Correct. DOS in the DOS days, you could output it as text, but that was it. Windows, once they finally got the scorecards sorted, which is a whole other issue, those initially were PDFs. So so it became how do we? Is there a way that we can extract the data from these PDFs and try to make life easier? We come to the relatively now unsung hero of our tale, a gentleman by the code name of Renzer from Laserforce Sacramento. Without Renzer, nothing further really comes stats wise. Like, he wrote the parser program that would let me take PDFs from Members Night.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And it would extract all the data from said PDFs and dump it into a CSV file that Excel could read easily. Now, for those of you listening to this podcast who, maybe have never used Excel or never have had to get into spreadsheet hell, one, I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you've never been in spreadsheet hell. But being able to pull these numbers in what was essentially, we'd have a full members night. We'd get between 8 and 10 games of Space 5 in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
And this parser would pull the numbers out in like a minute. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Like, you're going to give me all the information that I need in a minute. Oh, it was amazing. It was absolutely.
Yeah, honestly, compared to what you were doing, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I am obviously skipping a bunch of iterative developmental steps here. Like, it was a process to get the parser working the way that we wanted it and have it give us the information that we were after and all of that. But the net result was within a relatively short amount of time is we had this working parser that would let me pull a CSV file. It's a comma separated value file for those of you, who don't know what the acronym stands for. I could then put that into my custom MVP spreadsheet that would read it, refresh the spreadsheet, because yes, I'm that type of nerd. And it would reach, and suddenly there's all the stats for the night, and I could post them. So
wow.
That was the first.
So was
breakthrough.
there was no website at this point, but you
there
could
is no web there is
send
no
it
website
out to all your members. Got it.
Correct. There's no website at this point. This was we would post it on the old LF boards forums, which no longer exist.
Oh, there was a forum. Okay.
Yeah, I also ran that. Shocking. But we so we had a place to put the output where people could see it, but it wasn't necessarily any formalized thing at this point. Like at this point, this is it's essentially a Sacramento only tool, because you've got to pull the PDFs down and do a thing. Now, around this point, we start letting other people have access to it, just because, why not? And give them my MVP spreadsheet. It's like, here, this is what you put the output into. So there's some things going on around that now around this point, and I am trying to remember exactly when Russ actually set the LF Stats site up. I know it was before 2015, because we were using the stats site at the international tournament that we actually had in Loveland that year. So actually, it looks, just quickly going out to the site, looks like it was actually set up by 2012. So by the next year, after 2011 was all data entry. Like, yeah.
Right, I was gonna say, we weren't the first time that you had stats, but it wasn't very long before you came out to see us.
No, and it looks like some of that old data may have gotten blown up at a certain point. That
Yeah,
happens.
I actually did go and I tried to look at like Nats 2013 is kind of blank, unfortunately.
Yeah, looks like International 2014 on the site is kind of the first time that
Where it
it's
starts. Mm.
showing correctly. So be that as it may,
Mm.
the stat site gets set up, and Russ starts working with Renzer, and Russ I think will be the first person to say that Renzer did like 99% of the work with regards to getting the parsing program ported out to the web. This is really important because if the parser isn't web enabled, you know, it's essentially not as useful as it needs to be. By getting it ported out to the internet, as it were, and becoming basically the backbone of the LSTAT site, that then gave us the ability to have anyone at any tournament be able to upload scorecards and attach them to a set of tournament games.
Sure.
Um, so Russ to this day, still has to go in and set up a tournament if there's going to be one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which he
if a
does
new
every time.
yeah, and he does every time. It's absolutely fantastic. And if he's ever in the same place that you are, you owe him a beer.
You owe him
Is
a
basically
hug and a beer. Yeah.
you owe him a hug and a beer. That's basically what that gets down to. Um, so yeah, so we get the parser online as the backend to this site, and suddenly, the sky kind of becomes the limit with it. And we can upload PDFs, and it's great. And there's kind of constant conversation back and forth around what the actual math should be for for MVP for each position.
Mm-hmm.
It's that math has essentially been an iterative process since 2011 also. So anyone who thinks that we just randomly threw out numbers to do a thing, no, we definitely didn't just throw out numbers. There's been a lot of tweaking over time to try to balance things out. So we hit this golden age where as long as we have access to the game computer. I mean, all this is predicated on having access to the game computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we can save the scorecards, and we can either upload them directly to the site, or if we have to pull them out to a different computer and upload them that way, whatever. The point being, we can do this. This is awesome. Well, fast forward a couple more years,
Okay.
and yeah, it gets better / easier from an upload
Some
perspective.
drama coming up, or is it getting easier here?
No. This is all actually
We're in the golden
surprisingly.
age.
Yeah,
And
so
we're still in the golden age.
yeah, this is all surprisingly drama free. I mean,
Oh, happy ending.
the only real drama occasionally comes from the discussions around the math for
Mm-hmm.
various MVP things, and that I don't really consider drama. I consider that people wanting
No, it's just not
it to be
good for
the.
entertainment purposes, but please continue with the story. I'm glad there's a happy ending.
I mean, I could make some drama up, but yeah, it's just not
No,
really
we're
the.
telling history here.
Yeah, we are telling history here. So we get a little further down the track, and the scorecard output, we get another option. no longer do we have to be just the PDFs, which are great but are limited. Now we can actually get essentially the full game log file. So
It's a different type of file then.
it's a different type of file, and I don't remember what type of file it is. I'm sure Russ will listen to this and say, and will call me an idiot for not remembering, but it's technical back-end stuff, and I don't always know the technical back-end stuff.
Sure.
But the point being on this is now, instead of being locked into only the information that's on the actual scorecard, which again, I mean, there's a lot of information on a scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
Now we actually have a file that has all of the game events as they happened in the order that they happened. So now we can show things like, how much downtime did you actually have? How much time did you spend getting resupplied?
That's
how
nuts.
much how many times did you get reset? Like this format change slash the ability to get the full game log, that is truly what I believe has put us into the golden age of stats, because now we have so much more, so many more things that we can look at, because we have this raw game file. And there's some other cool things that it lets us do around, like if people change their code names in a tournament, that's fine. The stats will still hook correctly because it imprints their actual member number in the file. So there's some cool technical things with that, also. But just this idea that now we literally can, break down, oh, okay, yeah, you were shot 54 times. Oh, you were, of those 54 times that you were shot, you were reset, 18 times. Huh. So maybe this should tell you you need to move a little more, move a little quicker after you've been shot. Just things like that now you can look at the data and see those pieces, which as a teaching and training tool,
right,
can be so invaluable for newer players.
We haven't begun to really appreciate and apply what we have in front of us to our training yet. I mean, I don't know about other sites and what people are doing, but man, this sport is so complex. And if we get into an age where we start to have coaches and trainers, like, these stats become such a useful and vital tool for that, just like with any sport. But I can see why this next stage with the game log becoming accessible, like, that is so much more information than you ever had before.
Yeah.
And how recently was that? When did we get access to that?
That's been within the last 3 or 4 years.
Wow. Cool.
Maybe yeah, it's relatively recent. It's relatively recent. I don't think we had it in 2018 for Brisbane Nats. I don't. Yeah, I think
it's post-COVID or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a post-COVID thing. But again, I mean, everything kind of blends as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, I know that Death Knight does a lot of looking at, essentially looking at film, looking at game stats. I know he did a ton of that, both in the lead up to Nats as well as like during Nats. Looking for looking for patterns in the data, and looking to see if people were giving away giving away tags that maybe they shouldn't. But yeah, I mean, there's all these things that you can look at now, that can really help newer players get better faster. I mean, as we know, I mean, Space Marines 5 is a ridiculously complex game. I mean, the concept in and of itself, the concept in and of itself isn't necessarily super complex. It's a squad based combat game. But what obviously when you start getting into how everything interacts, yeah, it gets really complex really fast. So being able to, point out to a newer player, oh hey, you're giving up a lot of tags when you're in your reset time. So, make sure that you're more aware of your positioning inside the arena. Make sure that you're getting, lower behind walls, or make sure that you're, moving faster to clear that area so that you're not becoming a reset. And I use that at as the example, just because that tends to be the most universal, across every site, and and the most universal thing that all of us, when we were starting out, and still to this day in some cases me, um
Mm-hmm.
have to work on, as far as not giving away silly tags. So having the data to help support that is huge.
Yeah, definitely. So does that kind of cap off where we're at now?
So that is basically where we're at. We are in this golden age where we have all the stats almost all the stats we could possibly want at our fingertips. I know that there's always kind of ongoing discussion behind the scenes of what else could we add, what math could we look at to make to make MVP make more sense, or to smooth it out better. There are always those type of discussions going on, and the reality is, like, you know even even if you're a newer player, if you have an idea that you think might be cool, if you're looking at the stats site and going, hey, actually, I think I want to know this, pipe up and say something.
Definitely.
There, there's we definitely want to hear from anyone within the community if they've got ideas. The only reason that the stat site is as good as it is because of constant feedback from a wide variety of players. So the more people that
Mm-hmm.
can give feedback, the better.
Dude, thank you so much for the overview of the history. I didn't know about just how much it took to get this thing to work, and I thought it was all Rust, but like just calling out like extremes and Renzer and just giving credit where credit's due, I think is really important for people to know. So thank you to everyone who has made contributions along the way. I hope I can speak on behalf of the Laserforce community here when I say that, because just it's a completely different game with the stats. It's so much more official. What I
Yeah,
just like, we're not the biggest sports community ever, but we certainly have passion. The people who come in are just diehard nerds for this game.
that is certainly an accurate statement. I mean, when you look at the community, and you look at the amount of people that have 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years of of playing, and are still actively playing when and where they can. Yeah, obviously it's become a little harder for some of us, because home sites have closed. We've moved places that may not
Mm-hmm.
have super active sites. Um, but being able to look at other sites members nights is actually, it's like, oh yes, people are still doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and I can at least get I can at least get a contact high from looking at other people's stats and kind of seeing how, how people are doing, and how the game's evolving for other people and whatnot. So yeah, it's a good time. Yeah, just really really wanted people to appreciate, you know, the history of what's gone into this. And I'm just gonna have an old man moment here. You kids don't know how good you have it.
How good we have it, for sure. Well, honestly, that's one of the things I wrote out some of my questions for you is that, I came in 2015, stats were already here.
Mhm.
And frankly, my perspective has been, yeah, they're really cool and I'm glad we have them, but I do see some people get up in arms over them, or, the I think egos can sometimes get involved when people start to like associate their good stats with their, you know, their status in the community. Or I mean, frankly, there have been times when I have had a negative connotation towards stats when they haven't portrayed me in the best light. Just to put it out there, like I think that's a pretty common thing.
Mhm.
But stats, they don't do anything wrong. They just tell objective fact. It's subjective to say if like someone's a good player or not, if someone's a good commander or not, but you can objectively say if they're getting 3.2 missiles off in a game per average, or if they're on average winning this many games. I think the big one that, if I were to say, can sometimes create issues is MVP, which I'm a fan
Mhm.
of MVP, but measures of MVP are actually subjective. Like they're decided upon by a group of people.
Mhm.
And I think that's where sometimes people get a little upset about MVP.
Well, and I know we had, kind of touched on this at the start, but the one of the things that I am always trying to be very clear about with MVP is that it is not the be all end all
Mm-hmm.
of who you are as a player. It's it's a indication. It's multiple snapshots.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a it's a very kind of, say, 1,000-foot level view of
Mm-hmm.
of you as a AM player. Um, but things that don't show up in MVP, like communication skills, doesn't really show up in MVP. I mean, there's some inferences you can make, but it really doesn't necessarily show up in the numbers. Your overall arena positioning, again, there's some inferences you can make from the data, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. I remember in actually going back to 2011, um, Baden had made a Baden was, who now plays for Detroit ish, at that that tournament was playing with the Brisbane people, and he wasn't scoring very high that
Mm-hmm.
tournament. Well, he wasn't scoring very high that tournament because the way that Brisbane was setting up their team, the the spot in the arena that he was essentially controlling as a scout wasn't necessarily the most high trafficked area, but it was a critical area for overall arena control.
Mm-hmm.
So his scores weren't necessarily reflecting the level of impact that he was having on the game.
Mm-hmm.
So his overall MVP that tournament, wasn't spectacular as far as that goes. Now, everybody who has played with Baden knows that he's a really good player. Like knows that he is.
He'll mess you up.
Yeah, knows that he's a top tier player, especially in the U.S. But the stats of that tournament didn't necessarily reflect that. So, yeah, it's there's a danger in assigning too much value to the stats.
Sure, definitely. I'm
There's
really
also a
glad you made
danger.
that disclaimer.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, to be fair, also there's also a danger of not assigning enough importance to it. Like if you've got somebody who constantly as a scout is running a 0.5 hit differential, that's an indication that they're probably either A, they're on a team that's just getting wrecked, or B, they've got some systemic problems within their game because a scout's hit differential should never be that low.
Yeah.
And if it's that low consistently, then there's probably not necessarily any intangibles that are going to make that better. I mean, you can have a conversation about that, but probably not.
Right. Once again, you would use it as like a tool to show an objective fact, and not necessarily say, well, you're a bad scout player, because there's context. And you're also playing a team game, something you're talking about with Baden here. And that's not the only example that I can think of either, where in more sports than just SM5, some people get to have the shiny stats because of the role they play on the team. And other players who tend to be more playing an assisting role, helping that player get the really good stats so their team can win, like they're just not going to shine in the spotlight. And that's tough. I wish in a perfect world we had a way to measure a player's overall usefulness and skill, but that is subjective, and it's just, I'm not sure we're ever going to get there with MVP,
Well, I mean, I definitely think that we're closer to it now than we were historically. I mean, anytime you can add more things to measure, it helps move the needle in that direction.
Yeah, that's right.
So and that's where you get a lot of the discussions around what values should be assigned to this action, what bonuses should be assigned to that action, what type of smooth out do we potentially need for this. So, but yeah, again, is it ever going to be perfect? Is it ever going to be without some level of somebody going, well, I don't think that's right? Probably not. But as an objective measure for certain things, to find kind of initial things that need to be worked on within people's games, absolutely invaluable for that. And and also what's cooler than being able to get home from a tournament and then fully dig back into everything that you actually did that tournament. I mean, I'm sure there are things cooler than that, but it's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. If it's all right with you, I've got like 4 things I want to give some praise to the stats side and the MVP for.
Sure.
Because it's not a perfect system, but it's a cool feature that like you said, the players who initially created it, like this was something that was desired, some way to just rank players using all the stats you have at your disposal to try to make the attempt at least to rank your players. So one thing I think it does well is that it highlights good players on bad teams. I'm really oversimplifying that statement because it can highlight a good player on a average team, or but I do think it does a good job when, even if a team has lost,
Hmm.
Players that I know played well are still getting a reasonably high MVP and still sometimes higher MVP than players on the winning team. So there's been a good job at like separating things that you get just from being on the winning team with things that the best players are doing regardless of what's happening. Um, my favorite example, I go back to 2019 with the Detroit tournament,
Hmm.
and you go on the stats site, and I forgot how well St. George was doing. I think they were like a top 3 or 4 team in that tournament, but Tandor was the fifth highest player overall in the 2019 tournament. He was playing scout for most of it too, I remember. But he would just put up these massive scores, and by comparison to what everyone else on his team was doing, like I think he was making a significantly higher impact than pretty much any other scout in the tournament. I'm some people might disagree, but I loved that it was able to pull out his individual performance and like give him the credit for what he was able to do in that tournament. I've seen it with plenty of others. I don't know if you have a comment on that, how it highlights people.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, that that is, yeah, that's 100% one of the things that it does, because you can you can definitely, like, you, as as players, I think we always at least have a sense of, if there's someone who's on a weaker team but they're performing, like, you always kind of have a sense
Mm-hmm.
of that. Um, but it's nice to be able to, see that in black and white, in numbers, and how and how they're actually comparing to, people on teams that are doing better, in quotes. So yeah, it's a it's it's nice that, you know people don't necessarily get buried just because, their team might not be having as good of a week as somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Another thing I like is I it's not just because I made this tournament, but when we did the duos tournament, we utilized MVP to try to create maybe Laserforce's first matchmaking system.
Hmm.
There are things I would do differently if I could go back. But something I wouldn't do differently is change the concept, because by day 3 we had a lot of really close games. Um, so for me, that kind of validated that if you pair up, if you just go position by position and match people's MVP against their opponent,
Hmm.
I think it definitely makes for a fair matchup. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
I mean,
it
it
more validation that it works.
yeah, I mean, as with everything, it'll it'll get you more into the ballpark than if you're just doing it based on your own perception, because, we're 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 human beings. We have biases. That's
Mm-hmm.
shocking, and I know this is shocking and revelatory information for some people, but as human beings, we have biases, and, and you can, not necessarily give people credit for, the improvement they've shown over a certain amount of time. Like, you may still have, a person, like, oh, on a 1 to 10 scale, you know you still got it in your head that this person is like a 4, because they were newer, and that's kind of how they set in in your head.
Mm-hmm.
But they've, maybe over the last 6 months, have markedly improved, and now maybe they're a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
So if you're so having the black and white numbers, kind of filter down to a time frame, and go, oh, okay, I was gonna put them, in this tier, but maybe I do need to put them up because of their recent performance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, when you're trying to balance things out like that, yeah, hugely important.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun to like over the years look at your just your social games page and watch people creep up and down the leaderboards. Because you have to kind of like overcome the games of your past if you want to improve and keep scoring higher and higher. But like I've seen it happen a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you have a start and end date range. Like I could make it only in the last 6 months. Where's all of our players at? And I could
Yep.
also go back to a different timestamp, and that's pretty cool. Let's see. Third thing I like is the potential for SM5 fantasy leagues. I'm a huge fantasy football player, and
Mhm.
whenever someone's tried to start up one of these leagues, I've always been pretty excited at the concept, especially like for people who can't make a tournament. It's still a fun way to be involved and care about what's happening, and even like stake your claims on certain players and say, I think this person is being overlooked, and I think they're going to do way better than people are giving credit for. Without a stats page, we really can't make those happen. We definitely need to work on finding a format that works, though. Someone ran one year. I think it might have been the Syracuse random draw. I had to like change my lineup every time a round started, I think. And I think whatever we do, it has to be a format where people choose at the beginning of a tournament and don't have to like touch it the rest of the time. But that's not the most important thing that we need to come up with, you know.
No, but I do know that people did enjoy the few times that I think it's been Cody from Syracuse
Oh yeah,
who's
he's
set
works in
that up.
sports betting.
Yeah, who's tended to set that up. Yeah, the the fact that having the stats page kind of let that happen. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you get kind of all these unintended knock-on benefits. Where people see a thing and go, oh hey, because we have this, we can do this thing over here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, like I would never have thought about a fantasy Laser Force League for a tournament, but I'm glad that people had that idea and had numbers that they were able to use to set initial values.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Oh, they've been popping up, I think, since like I don't know, 2017 or something. I don't
Sounds
know.
about right.
They're not in every tournament occurrence, but yeah, Cody often tries to spearhead those. And the final one is just that like we use them, we look at them every single members night and every tournament. What you already mentioned, just going back and ogling over the stats.
Mm-hmm.
It brings the community together and gives us a new perspective on what happened in a tournament. Like I said, sometimes you realize, oh, a player was actually doing way better than I thought, or you get to look at the overall picture of a tournament in one little go. Or if you had a game that you remember, you can go and look at all the gritty details of what happened that game.
Yeah,
I'm not saying anything we haven't already said, you know.
yeah. And I was while we've been talking, I actually went back to one of my kind of original um, spreadsheets
Mm-hmm.
for MVP, and I feel like a dick. Night Owl from Oakley was also hugely involved with the original MVP value setup.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
so to, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Al in amidst all this as well, because he was definitely involved on the ground floor. Him, Tragedy, myself. That was kind of the initial um, digging through. Um, Rusty got got involved later, and obviously DK was involved, and a whole bunch of other people did throw in their input, but in that kind of initial build of things, I do have to, yeah, like I said, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Night Owl and his contribution to the MVP as well.
Night Owl has been added to the history book that I am writing right now, which
Excellent.
is just like a tiny little list of bullet points, but it's written down in history.
Excellent.
Man, okay. I don't have too much else to say. I have one strong opinion about MVP that I need to get out there for the public, and it
Sure.
is that ammo carriers should not gain or lose MVP based on their accuracy, because it is a benefit to be firing shots at places that you think a player might pop out of, because you have unlimited shots. That's one of your special abilities. So why would you give an ammo bonus MVP for being accurate? I think they should get more MVP for being inaccurate, if anything. End
So
of rant.
that's fine. So it's fun. It's funny you mentioned that, because one of the conversations that DK and I had post this year's Nats, is, maybe there does need to be an adjustment for resupply, accuracy just in general, um, because just to try to smooth that out a little bit. Not only for, the reason that you've mentioned, but, just trying to, find that balance. One of the things that changed when we went from the DOS software to the Windows software, and the DOS scorecards to the Windows scorecards, um, ammo and medic accuracy, or sorry, yeah, ammo and medic accuracy did not used to include resupplies.
Oh, interesting. Would you get
If you
negative
no, is
accuracy
it
for it, or?
no? If you shot and missed a resupply, it counted as a missed shot. But if you
Mm-hmm.
shot the resupply and hit it, it didn't count as a shot fired.
I think that's fair, if I'm honest.
So um, so now the resupply shots count as shots, which does let us in the, in the game files pull out how many of their shots were resupplies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely some some
Yeah, I
work
wouldn't
we can
have.
probably do there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have resupplying a player give you MVP necessarily. I mean, I'm not sure. The amount of times you resupply a player is pretty dependent on what happens in a game, you know? There are games that you're creaming them so quickly you hardly do any resupplies, and there's games that are long drawn out wins where you give tons of resupplies, and it just, that's a
Yeah,
bigger discussion to be had, and I don't really
yeah,
have any ideas for you.
yeah. No, it is something that's on our radar. How high up on the radar it is an open question, but it is something that we will likely have some discussions about, and figure out if there is a better way to deal with resupply accuracy. Um, yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, right right now there's obviously no immediate changes on the horizon, but,
Sure.
yeah, if you think of anything, if that you actually think might be a good idea, I mean, obviously, put it out there into the world. We'll go from
Mm-hmm.
there.
Man, just medics being able to retain their lives versus the amount of people they were able to shoot, I think is a pretty big indicator of skill. And then ammos get to play a little differently because they can actually get their lives back. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I said, all there's it's definitely something that bears having the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of actually having the
Yeah.
discussion and figuring out what is going to make sense.
Yeah, for
That's all.
sure. So if you had a player who was trying to improve their own gameplay using the stats site, what would you tell them to look for?
I would tell them, and again, reiterating something that I said earlier in the pod. The thing that I would look at would be the downtime indicators and seeing how much of your downtime is being caused by you being hit while you're in your reset period.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the obvious things like accuracy. I mean that's obvious. You know, you look at your accuracy, see how many shots you're hitting
Mm-hmm.
or not hitting. You know, obviously the more shots you hit, the less time you have to spend getting resupplied for shots. The less time you have, 8 seconds of doing nothing. Um, but being able to see how often you're getting pinged in your reset time, that is kind of the secret sauce, as it were. If you can minimize the amount of times you're taking an additional 8 seconds of downtime, um, then obviously you are more active, or you're active more often, but you can actually, tag opponents. Because if you're down, you can't. I realize it sounds like a really obvious statement, but if you're down, you can't shoot people. Um, you can set backtracks,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not like you can't do anything useful when you're down. There are definitely still some useful things you can do. Um, but wouldn't you rather be up and be able to shoot people? I mean, I know I would.
Oh yeah, same. I love being on. Okay,
So
so
yeah.
I'm actually looking at a scoreboard right now, and I see the little pie chart with uptime.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
It gives me yellows off from resupply, red is off from a tag, but I don't see any way to differentiate the first time I get tagged or a reset.
Oh, I'm an idiot. This is
I
something
don't
I
I
think
don't
we.
know that you're an idiot, but is this
No,
a
this is
upcoming
this is
feature?
this is something that that we've discussed, um, and apparently hasn't been implemented yet, because the last implementation was Russ adding the resupply, yeah,
Oh,
downtime.
okay, so it might be coming, but it's not there right now.
Yeah, so okay, well
Well,
that's
this is
that.
incentive for Russ to add this. Put a little fire.
uh he's gonna be very
Hey,
irritated with
honestly,
me.
this podcast is just gonna sit on YouTube, and if it ever gets added someday, that advice is going to be useful.
That's
But
true.
as for right now, I mean, really, if you really want to get into it, you could go to the actions, and you could watch every time that you got deactivated without coming up. That's something. Or
Yeah, I mean
you probably would. You need the replay of the scoreboard, I think, to really get that.
yeah, which there is, and you can replay certain games on there, assuming that the replay is not broken.
Replay beta. I'm trying right now. We shall see. Man, this is so cool.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I know that there was definitely,
oh, we got an error. It looks like.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things that Russ has had working, and then I know that there's been some issues with it as
Oh
well. But
no, it's
rewatching games
working.
also helpful.
yes, you can totally go back and rewatch a game with this beta for the LF Stats Next. This is so cool. I actually haven't tried this yet.
There you go. Okay, well, I feel a little bit better now that my advice isn't totally junk. Um,
No, it's not.
it's yeah. Can this is the peril of not having a site that I can play Space Marines at consistently near me. I end up not looking at things as much as I should.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah,
No, fair enough. Oh man, for the record, you can watch your MVP go up and down, and you can watch your accuracy go up and down in real time. That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. That was definitely one of the other very cool things that getting the actual log file at, as the stats made possible.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, I think we should wrap up here soon, if that's all right with you.
Yep, that's all good.
Do you have any takeaways that you hope players will get from this video?
I mean, really, the overarching takeaway I want to take from people take away is please have just have some appreciation for all the work that went into getting us to where we are with the stats, and understand that yes, we are in a golden age as far as that goes. But and yeah, and but also if you see things that you think need to be added, or things that you'd like to have added, you know speak up and let us know, so that we can try to get them put in. Yeah, the Russ does the stats kind of on the side, so you know it, it's not necessarily going to be an idea is going to come in and it's going to immediately show up. I mean, that's not how this works. I mean, we're all volunteers with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But don't if you've got a good idea, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with the community, so we can refine it and get it to more people.
Yeah, you can put it right in the comments below if you're watching on a device that you can do that. And if I had a takeaway that I hope people will get from this video, I will, I think I want to speak to the players who aren't placing very high in their stats. Because let's be honest, stats are way more fun to look at when you have a bunch of impressive things from yourself on the stats site. And I've placed at quite a few tournaments where I haven't come in like the top half of the players. And I just want to say that, you know, stats are a privilege, and they're really cool for helping us track things. They can help you improve your gameplay. Just to remember that if you are feeling bad about your stats, the thing I always tell myself is that I am capable of beating anybody, and I'm capable of losing to anybody. So you shouldn't just judge players based on what their stats are. When people get in the arena, I mean, you got a living, breathing person in there, and you're much more than your stats. That's my message.
That is entirely accurate, and I think that is a fantastic place to wrap up.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Than.
Oh, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking a lot about lasers, because again, I've been doing this a while, and there's something to be said for making sure that some of these things are preserved a little better, because things get lost in in the sands of time, as it were. So it's good to have these conversations, and be able to be able to get some of these memories down, so that should anybody need to know this information, which Probably not, but it's there, and it's recorded.
Yeah. Well, for the record, if you or anybody else wants to come on the show, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to talk with anybody from like experienced members to people just getting into the game. This is a place to geek out, and we'd love to just expand the community's knowledge. So thanks again. We'll wrap it up here. Check out the channel for more SM5 and Laserforce content, and hopefully we'll see you at a tournament.